The Pixel 8 Pro is a beautiful piece of tech and a modest improvement over last year's 7 Pro. And even though this is the best phone Google has ever made, is it really enough? I'll set the tone by saying, when you're looking at a Google phone, you have to have a different lens than you normally would. Even as a tech reviewer, this is true. Is it the best tech that you can get? No, almost never. Is it a revolutionary design or the thinnest smartphone ever? Also a clear no. But what the phone lacks in hardware is always worked around with clever software and a mix of AI so that your phone feels like the most intelligent piece of tech in your life. So does the Pixel 8 Pro keep up with the giants like the iPhone 15 Pro Max? Does it feel like the best attempt Google could have made for a flagship smartphone? Does it justify the increased price hike this year? After my testing, what I've come to realize is that the Pixel 8 Pro just isn't quite there yet. This was a really hard review to do because when this was announced, I was really excited about this phone. On the design side, the move from the waterfall display on the 7 Pro to a much flatter display on the 8 Pro was something that I was eagerly looking forward to. But picking up this phone for the first time, I was surprised that it actually felt bulkier than last year's phone. The waterfall display on the 7 Pro meant a very thin frame, and it gave the illusion that the phone was incredibly thin, which felt premium. But now that we've got that flat display, the frame has increased and it feels much thicker than it did before. And maybe it's because I'm used to iPhone or Samsung flagships, but I was also hoping for a flat frame along the sides, and something about these edges still being rounded feels dated and out of place in today's flagship phone lineup. Of course, the back of the phone is a nice looking improvement with this matte finish, and while it does look and feel really nice, I found it to be kind of a fingerprint magnet, even when taking it out of the box, only to get fingerprints on it immediately, which was really a disappointment to see. This would be less of a problem on a lighter model, so I wouldn't suggest going dark if you're picking one of these up this year. But flipping it over, it's a beautifully vibrant display that's got LPTO from 1 to 120 Hz, making it really responsive. It's got the second brightest display on a smartphone ever, going up to 2400 nits, which looks amazing even in direct sunlight. And despite this surprisingly good tech here, I can't help but notice the bezels around the phone seem really wide. This is another example where Samsung and Apple are leading the charge in making smaller bezels, where the Pixel feels like it's just left behind. But then I went back to the Pixel 7 Pro and realized the bezels on that were actually smaller. So we've actually sort of stepped back in time and widened them this year, which I think is going to disappoint a lot of people. When you are using this phone in your day-to-day, you take joy in the fun animations and the general character of the phone, but too often those enhancements are overshadowed by the time it takes to process anything on the phone. We've got Google's Tensor G3 processor, which should bring modest improvements to the performance, but even down to things like changing the wallpaper took some time to load with no clear reason as to why. Don't get me wrong, it's a good phone. But if you're looking for a phone where the apps load in record time, or it does any sort of processing the fastest, this phone just isn't it. Now, despite those problems that clearly stood out to me, there's something fun about using a Google phone. And there's no ignoring that Google mastered some things here. The haptics and sound are incredibly improved this year. This is the first time I felt haptics that were actually on par to an iPhone, which is really, really great to finally be able to say. Whether it's unlocking the phone, using the keyboard, or just selecting things on screen, they have the appropriate strength for the action and they feel exactly how you'd expect them to feel. The sounds that are new to the Pixel are fun, but they also have more depth and feel much more 3D and detailed than they ever have in the past. Now I know this doesn't have a lot to do with the phone itself, but it's changes like this that make your phone feel completely refreshed, even if it's not. But my favorite thing about the Pixel 8 Pro is that they've finally, for the first time on an Android phone that I've ever used, they've finally mastered Inertia Scrolling. Something that used to be an iPhone exclusive feature where when you scrolled, it appropriately slowed down when you stopped scrolling, that made it feel completely smooth and natural. And something Android has been lacking forever. But now, the Pixel 8 Pro feels nearly identical to that of iPhone, which a lot of people are going to notice here. You know, they might not put it into words, but you just feel it as you're scrolling through this thing. You feel like something is different and better. But the one thing that people always have major questions about is the battery life. And it's great, but it's basically on par with what you got last year, lasting a full 24 hours, which I would say is pretty accurate in my day-to-day. It's a marginal 50 milliamp boost from last year's Pixel 7 Pro, but remember, software optimization is where Pixel excels. And idle usage also gave me 3 days to 50%, and that's without turning on battery saving or any other features. This is also with 2 additional launchers running in the background. So the performance isn't shocking versus last year, but if you're somebody who doesn't pick up your phone a lot throughout the day, you're going to be pleasantly surprised with that battery life. You're going to feel like you just never have to charge this thing. But if you're used to a Pro phone that's quoting 1.5 to 2 days, you'll miss some battery performance here. Now, one of the few changes with this phone that's clear from a distance is the new camera layout. The new cameras were sort of overshadowed by a bunch of post-editing AI features like Best Take and Magic Eraser, but I wanted to say that for the average person who's taking photos and videos with this phone without any special editing, photos look nearly unmatched. Beautiful focus and blurs. I found that it was really easy to take photos that turned out very similar to that of my iPhone 15 Pro Max. Another first time that I'm saying something like this about an Android phone. And in terms of post-editing, there's a lot of really nice features here like Best Take, where you can take a burst of photos and then tap on the face to change it, so everyone has their best take in the photo. But features like this and Magic Eraser that lets you remove a subject are highlighted as the best features, yet they demonstrate the problems with Google's performance. Because if I run the same action on an iPhone, you can see it produces results way faster than the Pixel can accomplish. Overall, the cameras and editing tools are going to impress a lot of people, and their only hindrance is Google's own chip powering them. Something you'll only notice if you're comparing it to another flagship phone side by side. One other thing that I wanted to note that didn't really fit into this review is Google's launcher. This is Android software and Google's native launcher, so you would expect it to be the best. And maybe it's because I've been jumping between a lot more phones this year. I've spent a lot of time on Samsung's One UI, but I'm really finding that the Google launcher is very limited. Right away on the home screen, you get this at-a-glance widget, and you can tap and customize this widget in a number of different ways, but surprisingly, you can't actually remove it. It won't appear on secondary home screens, allowing you to place items all the way up to the top, but on the main home screen, you're stuck with it. I'm not really sure why this is happening, and it's a really uncharacteristic take on an Android phone. I'm not the only one bothered by this. There's a ton of people on Reddit complaining about this daily. Let me know in the comments if you agree with that. But the overall finding that I have with Google Launcher is that it doesn't give you nearly the same amount of customization that Samsung does. It really feels like if you're moving from an iPhone, you could be really happy with the stable but locked down Google Launcher, but if you embrace the customization that Android brings, it seems Samsung might have become the silent winner recently. Overall, the Pixel 8 Pro is a refined phone. The screen feels and looks better, the design, although feeling thicker, is made of a more premium build. Someone who uses their phone primarily scrolling social, listening to music, browsing the web, and using the cameras is going to love this phone because Google nailed it in all those categories. But that's not really who a Pro phone is for. For those expecting a significantly higher quality experience where the Pro stands for performance rather than Pro cameras are going to be disappointed. In a world where phones are getting sleeker and more refined and more premium, the Pixel 8 Pro just isn't quite there yet.